Welcome to another buy, hold, sell and skip video ahead of Game Week 11, and we have so many injuries to talk about and also a few other potential issues. And as always, we're going to keep on discussing Game Week 12, and the first player that you can see on screen is an Arsenal player, but I'm going to talk about this and clarify very shortly. If you enjoy this video, then be sure to give it a thumbs up and let's get it to over 300 likes, and we're very close to 16,000 subscribers, just under 300 subscribers left at the time of this recording, so let's keep on pushing, and without further ado, let's get straight into this video. Ben White has quietly gone under the radar and he has started every single game for Arsenal, and heading into this season I was one of these people that was questioning, well, with Saliba staying with the squad, who will drop out between Ben White and Saliba? Well, the answer is both will start, but White is operating as the right back this time, and Diaz was the one who has been largely missing out until the Liverpool game where he slotted in as the left back. So I think Ben White is fairly nailed. His attacking threat isn't anything amazing, but what is quite impressive, I'd say, especially compared to last season, is that his expected assists and big chances created has kind of gone up. And you look at the rate that he's creating chances and interlinking with Saka, and that's really helping Arsenal offensively and giving Saka a bit more freedom. Ben White is making these overlapping runs, and I think he's very important to how Arsenal play. His reading of the game is exceptional, and if Arsenal win a game by the narrowest of margins or keep a clean sheet anyway, even in a 0-0 draw, for example, Ben White has a decent chance of bonus points. But in most cases, especially with Arsenal not keeping that many clean sheets recently and the offensive players doing such a great job, you wouldn't expect it that often. But I still think Arsenal are one of the best defences in the league, and they will tighten things up at the back at some point in the season. But would I buy Ben White or any Arsenal player right now? Only if you don't have 3 Man City plus Arsenal players already. Otherwise, you're going to put a lot of pressure on yourself and you will have 10 men or even possibly fewer players available in Game Week 12, with that Arsenal versus Man City game being called off several weeks ago. So bear that in mind. But from Game Week 13 onwards, especially up until the World Cup, I think Arsenal defenders offer great value, and Ben White for me is the best option available. I talked about getting Trossard in quite early last week and also in the weeks prior, and I think Trossard is a great buy if you're looking for a midfielder right now in Game Week 11, and I think Saka could do a great job. He should be rested in the Europa League as well, but if you have Saka, of course, I would probably try to hold him if possible, but he is definitely a buy from Game Weeks 13 onwards, and I would also consider Foden. If I had to pick one between the two, it probably would be Foden at this moment in time, but they're both exceptional, and those two alongside Maddison for me are the best midfielders around 7.8 to 8.2 million. His underlying numbers aren't anything special, but there's still a few interesting stats there, like the key passes, and his assists is very balanced with his goals. So there's a lot of different ways Saka can get these points, and in terms of bonus points overall, I think he is one of the very best options in the Arsenal ranks. So I would go for Bukayo Saka, but mainly in Game Week 13, although I think he'll do a great job against Leeds in Game Week 11 as well. I will admit I struggled a lot in terms of buying players this week, and I'm going to talk about one very shortly that was a buy, but an injury in the Champions League has changed him actually in terms of the status, and I will talk about him. But Almiron, I mean, this is someone I always kind of downplay, I could say, but he's been very impressive this season. And whilst I think Xhaka is maybe a bit better, he has the blank in Game Week 12, and I think Almiron is more of an offensive option in general, and he has been getting those goals, and the underlying numbers are also pretty decent. You know, his XG is over 3, and for a midfielder around his price, you can't ask for much more, and he's also got 5 big chances. So I think Almiron is actually my favourite Newcastle midfielder right now, and I never thought I would say that, and I never thought he would be a buy in one of these videos. But let me know what you think of this pick. I do think Xhaka is slightly better, but at this moment in time I would favour Almiron because of the blank for Arsenal. Reece James was actually a buy until his injury against AC Milan in Chelsea's 2-0 victory away at the San Siro, and I think Reece James is now a hold as a result. So wait for more information. Graham Potter said we should get more information after a day or two, and I think around Thursday, Friday is when we should know more about Reece James, hopefully before the deadline. That would be obviously great. If he's out for a long time, of course, then this situation would change. But you look at the alternatives, and you've got Cancelo, who for me is the best defender, but he blanks in Game Week 12. Then you're also looking at the second City defender, the same applies to them. Then you've got Ben White, who I really like from Game Week 13 onwards, but he also blanks in Game Week 12. The same goes for other Arsenal defenders like Saliba. And then you've got Trippier, who's got some tough fixtures coming up, and whilst I arguably think he's the second best defender at the moment, it's not maybe the best time to buy him in. So really, it's kind of slim pickings. Anderson has great fixtures, and same with Gay, but Crystal Palace aren't keeping clean sheets. So I would hold Reece James, but I will admit it is a bit frustrating because he was one of the defenders I was really looking at, and it's kind of a week that's a bit awkward to buy some of these players. There's not much choice in my opinion apart from maybe Trossard, Harry Kane, and a few other of these Spurs options potentially, but it's kind of a really awkward week to start buying players in, because most of the players I want to recommend are Arsenal, Man City players. But of course, we all know about Game Week 12. As for Reece James, though, he's got some decent underlying numbers for a defender, but I don't think they're anything special. And I think last season it was better at this stage of the season. But Reece James showed his class in the first game against AC Milan in the home victory. Then he was benched against Wolves, which was very frustrating. I thought he had a really big haul in him there, and it hasn't really gone according to plan with Reece James. But I would hold him, wait for more information, and if he's out for a long time, then he would become a sell. But for the time being, hold Reece James. There's not much more to go on. Another hold and another injury doubt is Harry Kane. I think he'll be completely fine, and we'll find out in today's game against Frankfurt, which I expect him to start in. If he doesn't, then I would be slightly concerned, and I am looking at him in my own team selection, so be sure to check out the team selection video. He could be one of my transfers in this week. He's got some fantastic underlying numbers, and if it wasn't for Haaland, everyone will be talking about how good Kane has been this season. 8 goals in 9 games with 2 assists, and some great underlying numbers, including 10 big chances, and he deserves a bit more credit, I believe. He's a great captaincy option in Game Week 11 and even potentially 12, although that United fixture does put me off slightly, and Spurs actually lost both games to the Red Devils last season. But Harry Kane for me is a hold, and if he is declared fit and we see him play against Frankfurt, he's arguably a buy, to be honest. The last hold of this video is Mitrovic, and he's another injury doubt. And whilst Marco Silva was more positive heading into Game Week 10, talking about him definitely being available against Bournemouth, things haven't looked as optimistic in the last few days. But I have to say, I think Mitrovic will be available, and I hope he is, definitely. You look at the alternatives like Daka, I don't really trust him and his minutes. The same goes for Leicester in general. Then you look at others like Martial, who just came off injured against Everton, so that's obviously a big blow for them, and he would have been a great option, but you can never really rely on Martial to stay fully fit. Then you look at Solanke, who's a decent enabler at 5.7 million, but Bournemouth aren't the greatest offensively, and I don't think they'll get many goals, and Solanke, as a result, won't get that many returns. But of course, he's cheap, and he will offer decent value. And you look across the rest of the board, and it's just slim pickings. You've got Antony for a little bit more, and Callum Wilson. Those are 2 really good replacements if Mitrovic is ruled out for this week. But if he is fit and available, I mean, you look at the next 4 or 5 games, they look fantastic, with the exception of Man City. And Fulham have struggled in recent games, but I think Mitrovic is a really big part of that. And once he returns, he'll help them get some points and also goals across the board. And his underlying numbers, by the way, for a budget striker is absolutely sensational. So I would hold Mitrovic, and honestly, around his price and below, I don't think there's anyone better. I talked about selling Diaz in Game Week 9, and even heading into this season, I was never the biggest fan of Diaz FPL-wise. I think he's a quality player, and he's a great dribbler, but in terms of FPL returns, he's never really convinced me. And whilst he had a good start to the season, especially around Game Weeks 3-4 after his haul against Bournemouth, he hasn't really kicked on from that point, and Liverpool have really struggled. But the main reason why I'm talking about selling Diaz is because he's been ruled out up until December, so he's out for the rest of the first half of the season, and he'll be back after the World Cup is over. So we're talking mainly about Boxing Day in Game Week 17. So Diaz is a sell, and it is a bit of a shame because I think he could maybe have kicked on from Game Weeks 13 to 15, but Diaz has to be sold, and the other 2 sells in this video are also Liverpool players. Trent featured in last week's video, and I actually talked about skipping him at that point because Liverpool just looks so suspect defensively, and also in all areas of the pitch you don't have too much confidence. And whilst Liverpool put in a good performance against Arsenal, Trent was still one of the areas of weakness which Arsenal just kept on targeting, and he got subbed off at half-time, and I thought it was a tactical change to put on a better defensive player in Joe Gomez, but actually it turned out to be an injury, and Trent will miss out the next 2 weeks. The same goes out for Joel Matip, so it's a really big blow for Liverpool, and they've got so many injury problems right now, which kind of resembles what happened 2 seasons ago. But he's going to be an injury doubt. He's too much money anyway, not delivering points, so there's so many reasons to sell Trent, and even his underlying numbers are pretty poor by his lofty standards. So I would sell Trent, and honestly, I would avoid all Liverpool players for the time being. That also includes Salah, who was a skip in last week's video, and the only Liverpool player I would consider right now is probably Roberto Firmino, who is only 8 million. He's got more points than Gabriel Jesus, and he has been fantastic all season. Probably Liverpool's best player by some distance. Salah's underlying numbers aren't bad, but by his lofty standards, just like with Trent, they aren't great, and you've seen much better from him in the past. And you also look at his positions, once again, just far too wide, and that doesn't fill you with confidence. He was anonymous against Arsenal, who they put Tomiyasu in there to kind of deal with Salah. If City do the same in Game Week 11, and they put Ake there to deal with Salah, I think Salah could once again be shut down. I would actually have more confidence if City put Cancelo there, who Salah has actually gotten the better of in these fixtures in the last few years. But let's wait and see what Pep does in that game. It should be a really interesting one regardless, and I still think Liverpool can bounce back. But in terms of winning the league, that does seem a step too far for them at the moment. I actually like the fixtures from Game Weeks 12 to 14, but then you've got Tottenham as well in Game Week 15. Liverpool haven't been at it, and whilst they performed well against Arsenal, they're such a vulnerable team, especially at the back, but they are still good offensively. But I would rather go for Firmino and maybe even Nunez at this point in time over Salah. But with the amount of kind of rotation and different options Liverpool have up front, that's what will put me off Firmino. And with Salah, you know he's going to start and he's on penalties, but it's just not enough. He's far too much money, and I would honestly sell him and possibly go for him once he starts showing some form, maybe in Game Weeks 13 or 14. And maybe the kind of counter argument behind not selling Salah would be that Son faces Man United in Game Week 12, De Bruyne blanks of course, and then you look at the other options. Well, I would actually rather go to an 8 million midfielder or below, so I'm looking at Maddison. After Game Week 12, I'd look at Saka and Foden. Then you have Trossard, so you've got plenty of options there. Also Zaha, and I would rather go for a midfield structure like that, where you have more medium price midfielders, and you can go for 2 premium attackers potentially with Harry Kane and Haaland, of course. I don't think Sterling is a bad option, but around his price, not being a bad option doesn't mean he's worth going for. And Aubameyang is the Chelsea attacker that I'm mainly looking towards. He scored against AC Milan, and it's a bit funny because I talked about this before Aubameyang made his debut for Chelsea. I think they could occupy similar positions, and it happened in the AC Milan game where Sterling was about to shoot, but Aubameyang beat him to it and tucked it away to make it 2-0. So it's going to be tricky to see how they both coexist, Sterling and Aubameyang. And with Chelsea assets in general, you're looking at maybe Kepa in goal, Reece James if he's fit, and then maybe Aubameyang or Mason Mount. And Sterling is just far too much money. And just like I said with Salah, I would rather go to Maddison, Zaha, Foden, Saka, and Leandro Trossard. I think those are the best midfielders right now, especially in terms of value. And I would rather go for Harry Kane, who's only around 1 million or so more expensive than Raheem Sterling, has far better stats. He is the main man for Spurs, and he's on penalties. So I would rather do something like that instead. And also in terms of premium midfielders, I still prefer Heung-min Son, and let's not even forget to mention Kevin De Bruyne, although he may not be the best in terms of value. So Raheem Sterling is a bit of an awkward one. Some kind of tough fixtures as well coming up, like Man United and also Arsenal in the next 5. But even some of the other ones could also pose a bit of a test, like Brighton away. But I have to say with Raheem Sterling, I think he's a skip. And once he shows some consistency, we can start to consider him. But really, he's one to put on the watch list and skip for now. Bruno Guimaraes was one of the stars of Game Week 10, but look at his underlying numbers. They're absolutely awful, and he hasn't really shown the consistency he did from January up until May last season. And I would actually rather go for Almiron and maybe say Maximan when he's back and fully fit, Callum Wilson up front, and let's not even forget the likes of Trippier, Fabian Schär, and also Nick Pope in goal. So with Bruno Guimaraes, he's one to skip for me. Despite his incredible performance in Game Week 10, the underlying numbers are just not there, and I don't think his returns are sustainable. And also, Newcastle have some pretty tough games coming up, especially in the next 3, where they face Man United and Tottenham away. And despite how good Newcastle are, I don't see a huge ceiling for the likes of Bruno Guimaraes, and whilst I think Newcastle can get results, I wouldn't back them FPL-wise in particular. I've been asked a lot about Antony in recent weeks, and you can't ignore him. 3 games, 3 goals, and he scored against the likes of Arsenal, Man City, who are the top 2 teams in the league right now. There's a lot to like with Antony. I'm not a big fan of the next few fixtures, and I still think Antony hasn't been that involved in general. His underlying numbers aren't too shabby, but they're also nothing spectacular. And the reason why I would skip Antony for now is because the fixtures aren't really there for the next 3. And I also look at the alternatives. You have Maddison, Trossard, all these options I keep on naming throughout this video. And I think they just offer far better value, and I would have more confidence in them delivering consistently than Antony. But what I would say with Antony, he should be added to the watch list, and he could be a great buy perhaps maybe after Game Week 13. So you're maybe looking towards the West Ham game, because just after Game Week 12 against Tottenham, with the blank obviously in mind between Arsenal and City, he faces Chelsea away, and that just doesn't fill me with confidence. And I would maybe look to get him in around Game Week 14 or 15. But right now I would skip Antony, but I have to say he has definitely been doing a far better job than I expected, and he has been one of United's best players this season, but his overall game hasn't really impressed me that much. Let me know your thoughts on all the buy, hold, sell and skip selections, and if you would change anything. Like I said, Antony for me is a really good player, and he has done a much better job than I expected, and he could be someone to think about more so in the future, but he is a skip right now in my personal opinion. If you disagree, then be sure to let me know. And if you enjoyed this video, found it useful, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's get this video to over 300 likes, and we're pushing ever closer towards 16,000 subscribers, so let's make that happen. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, where we'll also hit some new milestones as well, so thank you very much. And you can also join the Discord server and the FPL League. All of that is in the description below. And thank you to all the channel members and Patreons. We have over 60 now, so thank you very much. And I wish you all the best of luck for Gameweek 11 and the rest of the season. And I'll see you next time.